Family has always been complicated for me, especially with my little brother Jason, the golden child who could do no wrong. I worked 5 years to buy my Ford Mustang, my pride and joy. When the police called at 2 in the morning saying my car had been in an accident, I was devastated. But nothing prepared me for arriving at the station and hearing my parents say I should take the blame for Jason. Unbelievable. Before I tell you this crazy story, let me know where you are watching from and hit like if your family has ever treated you unfairly. I never imagined my first car would lead to both my brother and father ending up in jail. I am Carter, 28 years old, an IT engineer who has been on my own since 18. I moved out after high school and have been building my career steadily ever since. Let me paint a picture of my family for you. My father, Frank, is a 50-year-old successful lawyer. He has always been controlling and placed extremely high expectations on his children. Nothing was ever good enough for him unless it was absolute perfection. My mother, Diana, 48, is a stay-at-home mom. She is generally gentle but has always favored my younger brother and excused his behavior no matter what he did. Then there is my brother, Jason, 19, currently a freshman in college. He has been the golden child from the moment he was born. My parents, especially my mom, spoiled him rotten. He never faced consequences for anything he did wrong. Growing up, I was constantly compared to Jason. If I got an A-, my father would ask why it was not an A+. If I won second place in a competition, he would ask why I did not win first place. Meanwhile, Jason could bring home C's, and my parents would praise him for trying his best. When I graduated high school with a 3.8 gigapascals and got accepted to several good universities, I expected my parents would help with tuition, as they had always promised. Instead, my father sat me down and told me I needed to learn independence. He refused to pay a single dollar toward my education, saying I needed to figure it out on my own. I later discovered they were saving that money for Jason. I took out loans, worked multiple jobs, and put myself through a state college while living in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates. I graduated with a computer science degree and landed an entry-level IT job. For 5 years, I saved every penny I could paying off my student loans and dreaming of the day I could buy my own car. 3 months ago, that dream came true. I purchased a Ford Mustang, a 2023 model. Nothing too fancy, but it was mine, bought with my own money. Every time I drove it, I felt a sense of accomplishment. That car represented everything I had worked for, all the obstacles I had overcome without family support. Despite our strained relationship, I still tried to maintain some contact with my family. I would visit once a month for dinner, listening to them gush over Jason and his college adventures. My accomplishments at work were barely acknowledged, while Jason getting a B on a paper was treated like he had won a Nobel Prize. Last month, during our family dinner, Jason spent the entire evening talking about his fraternity parties and how popular he was becoming on campus. My parents hung on every word, like he was delivering profound wisdom. When I mentioned I had been promoted to senior systems engineer, my mother said, "That is nice," before immediately turning back to Jason and asking for more details about his social life. My father glanced at my car in the driveway and remarked, "That is quite flashy for someone your age. Are you sure that was a wise financial decision?" Meanwhile, they had bought Jason a MacBook Pro, a new iPhone, and were paying for his apartment near campus because dorm life was too stressful for him. I left that dinner feeling the same way I always did after family gatherings, like an outsider looking in on a family that did not quite have room for me. I drove home in my Mustang, the only thing in my life that felt truly mine, never imagining that in just a few weeks, that car would become the center of the biggest family crisis we had ever faced. It was 2:15 in the morning when my phone rang. I was in deep sleep, and at first I thought it was my alarm. When I finally managed to answer, a stern voice identified himself as Officer Daniels from the local police department. My heart started racing as he explained that my car had been involved in an accident. The officer told me that the driver had sustained minor injuries and was currently being held at the station. He asked me to come down immediately to sort things out. I felt like I was still dreaming. My car was in my garage, or at least it should have been. I jumped out of bed and ran downstairs in my pajamas. When I opened the garage door, my stomach dropped. The space where my Mustang should have been was empty. In a panic, I ran back inside and checked the hook where I kept my spare key. It was gone. Someone had taken my spare key and stolen my car. And now it had been in an accident. I threw on some clothes, called an Uber, and headed to the police station. My mind was racing with questions. Who had taken my car? How bad was the accident? How much damage was there? Would insurance cover it? The 15-minute ride felt like hours as I cycled through confusion, fear, and anger. When I arrived at the station, I was directed to a waiting area. As I turned the corner, I was shocked to see my parents sitting there looking distressed, and next to them, with a bandage on his forehead and bloodshot eyes, was my brother Jason. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing. Jason looked up at me with a mixture of shame and defiance. His eyes were red and glassy, and I could smell alcohol from where I stood. It was immediately clear he had been drinking. Officer Daniels approached and explained the situation. At approximately 1:30 in the morning, my Mustang had been spotted traveling at nearly 90 miles per hour in a 35 zone. The officer attempted to pull the vehicle over, but the driver, now identified as my brother, accelerated instead. He lost control around a curve, jumped the curb, and crashed into the front of a local convenience store. Thankfully, the store was closed and no one was inside. Jason had sustained minor injuries, but the damage to both my car and the storefront was extensive. The officer also informed me that breathalyzer tests confirmed Jason was well over the legal limit for alcohol, and he did not have a valid driver license, only a learner permit that did not allow him to drive without supervision. I stood there stunned into silence. My car, the one thing I had worked so hard for, was likely totaled. And my brother had stolen it, driven it drunk, and crashed it. Before I could say anything, my father stepped forward. "Carter, we need to talk about this situation," he said, guiding me to a corner away from the officers. That is when he made the suggestion that left me speechless. He wanted me to tell the police that I had given Jason permission to drive my car. His reasoning was that since I had no prior record, I would likely just get a fine for allowing an unlicensed driver to use my vehicle. Jason, on the other hand, could face serious charges that might ruin his future. "You have insurance, son," he said. "The car can be replaced, but your brother is looking at potential jail time. He cannot have that on his record before he has even started his life." I could not believe what I was hearing. My mother joined us, tears in her eyes, begging me to protect my brother. "It is just a car, Carter," she said. "Family comes first. Think about how this could affect Jason's life." As if the situation was not bad enough, I soon learned that they had already told the police I had given Jason permission to use my car. They had lied to the officers before I even arrived. Jason had backed up their story, claiming I regularly let him borrow my car, which was completely untrue. I felt betrayed on every level. Not only had my brother stolen my car and destroyed it, but now my parents expected me to take partial blame for his actions and potentially face legal consequences myself. Looking at my family, I made a decision that would forever change our relationship. "I am not lying to the police," I told them firmly. "I never gave Jason permission to drive my car. He stole my spare key and took it without my knowledge or consent." The looks on their faces shifted from pleading to disbelief, then to anger. My father grabbed my arm and lowered his voice to a threatening whisper. "You will regret this, Carter. Do not test me." But I had spent too many years being the responsible one while watching Jason escape consequences. I pulled away from my father's grasp and walked directly to Officer Daniels. "I need to file a report for a stolen vehicle," I said. "I never gave my brother permission to drive my car." After telling the police the truth, the atmosphere in the station became electric with tension. I confirmed to Officer Daniels that I had never given Jason permission to use my car and that the spare key had been stolen from my home. I made it clear that I wanted to press charges for vehicle theft. My father's eruption was immediate and violent. His face turned a deep shade of red as he shouted at me across the station, calling me a traitor to the family. My mother collapsed into tears, wailing about how I could do this to my own brother. Frank pointed his finger at me, his lawyer voice in full effect. "You have no idea what you have just done, Carter. I have connections in this town. I can make things very difficult for you. Think about your job, your reputation." The threat was clear, but I stood my ground. The officers separated us, taking Jason to another room for formal questioning and a more thorough alcohol test. I was asked to provide a detailed statement about the car and the missing key. My parents were told to wait in the lobby. The drive home alone was surreal. The sun was beginning to rise, casting an orange glow over a world that felt completely different from the one I had woken up in just hours before. My phone buzzed constantly with text messages from my mother, each one more accusatory than the last. "How could you betray your own blood? We have always known you were jealous of Jason, but this is a new low. You are destroying this family out of spite." I turned my phone off, unable to bear the emotional assault. When I arrived home, I immediately called my insurance company, only to receive another blow. Because Jason had taken the car without permission and was not listed on my policy, the insurance would not cover the damages. I was looking at a total loss of my investment, with no recourse, but to sue my own brother who had no assets. By afternoon, the family attack had spread to social media. My mother had posted a vague but pointed message about ungrateful children who turn their backs on family in times of need. Distant relatives and family friends began calling and texting, asking why I was being so harsh on Jason. None of them seemed to understand or care that he had stolen and destroyed my property. 2 days later, I received a call from my manager at work, asking me to come in for an urgent meeting. When I arrived, I was informed that someone had contacted the Human Resources Department with concerns about my alcohol and drug use. They claimed I had a problem that was affecting my work performance and could potentially put the company at risk. It did not take long to figure out who was behind it. My father had made good on his threat, attempting to sabotage my career. I had to explain the entire situation to my manager and the HR director, providing police reports and contact information for the officers who had administered the alcohol test to Jason, proving it was my brother, not me, who had been intoxicated. Fortunately, my work record was spotless, and my manager had always respected my professionalism. They believed my account but warned me that they had to conduct a formal investigation due to the nature of the allegations. That night alone in my apartment, the weight of what was happening truly hit me. My car was gone. My family had not only failed to support me, but had actively tried to force me to take the blame for a crime I did not commit. And now they were attempting to destroy my career, because I refused to sacrifice myself for Jason once again. The pain of this betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, yet they were willing to throw me under the bus to protect my brother from the consequences of his own actions. The realization that my family valued me so little was devastating. I cried that night for the first time in years. Not just for the loss of my car, but for the final loss of any illusion that my family would ever treat me fairly. Through my tears, however, came clarity. I could not continue allowing them to manipulate and control me. I had to stand up for myself, even if it meant standing alone. The next morning, I called a lawyer. 1 week after the accident, I received an official notice from the police department. Jason was being charged with driving under the influence, vehicle theft, destruction of property, and evading police. The charges were serious, carrying potential jail time. My father, true to form, immediately began pulling strings. I learned through my lawyer that Frank was contacting the district attorney office trying to get the charges reduced. He was also reaching out to the owner of the convenience store, offering a generous settlement if they would drop their claim against Jason. My lawyer advised me to be proactive. She helped me understand my rights as the victim of vehicle theft and guided me through filing a civil suit against Jason for the value of the car. It felt strange to be taking such formal action against my own brother, but I reminded myself that he and my parents had left me no choice. What happened next changed everything. The convenience store owner contacted the police with surveillance footage from that night. The video showed more than just the crash. It captured Jason arriving at the store parking lot about an hour before the accident, meeting up with several other young men with cars, and organizing what appeared to be an impromptu street race. The The footage clearly showed Jason bragging to his friends, pointing at my Mustang and pretending it was his car. He was visibly intoxicated even before the race began. The video then showed the cars lining up on the main road before speeding off. 20 minutes later, the footage captured the crash itself, with my Mustang losing control and plowing through the storefront. This evidence transformed the case. Jason was not just a college kid who made a one-time mistake by borrowing his brother's car. He had stolen it specifically to show off and participate in illegal street racing. My lawyer also petitioned for access to Jason's phone records as part of the discovery process for my civil suit. What we found was shocking. Text messages revealed that Jason had taken my car without permission at least 5 other times over the past month. He had been sneaking into my house when I was at work, taking the spare key joy, riding with his friends, and returning the car before I got home. There were dozens of messages to his friends bragging about the sweet Mustang he would borrow and claiming it was really his car, but kept at my house to avoid parking issues at college. In some messages, he even referred to planning the street race several days in advance. When this evidence was presented to the police, the case against Jason strengthened considerably. My father, desperate to protect his golden child, made a critical mistake. He approached the lead detective on the case and implied that a financial arrangement could be made if certain pieces of evidence, particularly the text messages, were to be misplaced. The detective, a 20-year veteran with an impeccable record, reported this attempted bribery to his superiors immediately. Within 24 hours, my father was arrested for attempting to obstruct justice and bribe a public official. The lawyer who always believed he was above the law was now facing criminal charges himself. I received a frantic call from my mother that evening. She was hysterical, crying about how both Jason and Frank had been taken into custody. She begged me to drop all charges, to tell the police I had given permission after all, to do whatever it would take to get her husband and son home. "I can fix this, Mom. I can make it all go away," I told her, and for a moment I heard relief in her voice. "All it would take is for you and Dad to admit what you did, to acknowledge that Jason stole my car, that you tried to make me take the blame, and that Dad tried to corrupt the legal process." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "You are just being vindictive now," she finally said, her voice hardening. "This is about your jealousy of Jason. It has always been about that." At that moment, I realized that nothing had changed. Even with her husband and son facing jail time, my mother could not acknowledge the reality of what they had done. In her mind, I was still the problem, not their actions. "I am not jealous of Jason, Mom," I replied calmly. "I am just done being the scapegoat. For the first time in my life, Jason will face consequences for his actions, and so will Dad." When we faced each other in court a month later, I looked into my brother's eyes for the first time since the accident. What I saw surprised me. Instead of the defiance or entitlement I expected, I saw fear and just maybe the beginning of understanding. For the first time in his life, Jason was realizing that his actions had real consequences, and no one, not even our powerful father, could shield him from them. The court proceedings moved relatively quickly. Given the overwhelming evidence and my father's legal troubles, there were few delays. Jason was sentenced to 6 months in county jail and 2 years probation. He also lost his license for 3 years and was required to complete both community service and an alcohol treatment program. My father's case was even more serious. The attempted bribery of a police officer, combined with his status as an officer of the court, resulted in a 1-year jail sentence. Additionally, he was disbarred, ending his legal career permanently. The man who had built his identity around professional success and social standing had lost everything because he could not allow his golden child to face consequences. 2 weeks after the sentencing, my mother came to my apartment. It was the first time she had visited my home in years. She looked smaller, somehow older, the events of the past months visibly weighing on her. We sat in awkward silence before she finally spoke. "I failed you," she said softly. "I always favored Jason. I thought I was protecting him, but I was just teaching him that he did not have to be responsible for his actions. And in the process, I hurt you, over and over again." Her apology, while appreciated, could not instantly heal the years of damage. But it was a start. I told her I needed time and space to process everything that had happened. She respected that, giving me her new contact information and telling me she was there when I was ready. The months that followed were a time of rebuilding for me. With the legal battles behind me, I focused on healing the emotional wounds. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma. She helped me understand that the dynamics in my family were not my fault, and that setting boundaries was not just healthy but necessary. I also found strength in unexpected places. My coworkers who had stood by me during my father's attempts to sabotage my career became close friends. My manager even fast-tracked my consideration for a project lead position, impressed by my professionalism during the crisis. I joined a car enthusiast group, finding community with people who shared my passion. 6 months after the accident, with the insurance settlement from my civil suit finally processed, I bought a new car. Not another Mustang, but a Dodge Challenger, a fresh start with no painful memories attached. Perhaps most surprisingly, I began visiting Jason in jail. Our first meeting was tense and difficult, but as the weeks passed, something changed. Without our parents' influence, especially our father's controlling presence, Jason began to show signs of genuine remorse and maturity. He was taking classes in jail, staying sober, and making plans for a different kind of future. "I do not deserve your forgiveness," he told me during one visit. "But I want you to know that I see it now. How differently they treated us. How unfair it was to you. I am sorry for not seeing it sooner." I could not forgive him yet, but I could see him trying to change, and that was something. Through this painful journey, I learned critical lessons about family boundaries and self-worth. I realized that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. My parents thought they were protecting Jason by shielding him from responsibility, but they were setting him up for a lifetime of entitlement and failure. I also learned that family is not just about blood. True family are the people who respect your boundaries, who value your well-being as much as their own, and who love you without conditions or comparisons. I was building that kind of family now, one honest relationship at a time. The irony is not lost on me that it took losing my car and in many ways my biological family to find real freedom. Freedom from unrealistic expectations, from constant comparisons, from the exhausting effort of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Sometimes the deepest wounds come from those closest to us. But have you ever wondered whether the boundaries we set to protect ourselves are really about keeping others out, or about knowing when to let go? If you have ever had to make the difficult choice between family loyalty and self-respect, let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to stand up for yourself, even when it is difficult. Thank you for listening, and remember, the family you choose can be stronger than the family you were born into.